thank our host, Project Butterfly, for allowing us to hold this space in this beautiful loft. Tonight we're going to be talking about ascension. And ascension, in a sense, is a lot of languaging has already come out about the Mayan calendar, the 2012 timeline. Quantum physics is attempting to describe some of these shifts as well. Ascension, there's a lot of confusion around that word. So when we ask, what is ascension? Ascension is the next level in understanding that there is mechanics behind creation of which consciousness moves through time, field, space, or dimensional space. So to make this easier, when I say timelines or dimension, it is the same thing. So in your mind, when we're talking about moving forward in dimension, we are skipping through time. And so when we talk about timelines and where our consciousness is being focused, that is ascension. It's a change in the focus of our consciousness. Our consciousness and its station of identity is moving to another plane and reality, or dimension, or time. This is why so many of us that are having the ascension experience and are on the ascension timeline are feeling the reality split, where your experience of time and space, your sensation, your higher sensory perception is more developed or different than many of the beings around you. So right now, those of us, the consciousness that has chosen the ascension timeline is still the minority. And so in describing what we are actually undergoing at this time is an amazing opportunity, a quantum leap in consciousness, and yet each one of us is doing it at our own time and pace, in our own agreement with God's source. So those of us that are waking up into the ascension now tend to have, in terms of a group energy, more stellar genetic activation, more star-seeded or other non-human memory being brought into the human experience. And it is this group that I use a term called starseed or the Indigo races. So the word indigo has been used quite often, and this is kind of applying the understanding that the indigo consciousness is directly resulting in the ascension shift. That is the purpose of the indigo consciousness, and actually embodying on the planet Earth at this time is to be the Ascension Vanguard and the Ascension Way Showers. So all of the crystal children and the indigo children that are being born are again being activated into these potentials. And those of us that are in this room now are star-seeded or indigo potentials. We are the adult indigos that are here to lay the groundwork of the shifting paradigm into the new energy reality. And that's why, again, we've been guided to share the space together, and why we're guided to actually be resonating to this particular material. What you'll notice is that if you're resonating with this material, you may find that people around you are completely not interested in it. And sometimes that feels a little like, why am I interested in it? And they are not. And again, it is all about frequency and alignment to the soul purpose and agreement of which you're here to creatively express in this point of time. So understanding that you are, by default, an energetic leader, an energetic steward of the ascension process by means of going through it in the first waves of this particular process. So when we talk about ascension, and when I talk about the physics of ascension, because ascension is again understanding the spiritual science behind the movement of consciousness. Once we become more aware of a framework that helps to support how the hologram works, that we are a hologram, this is a hologram. When we actually have a framework of that understanding, we are able to experience it. Now, one of the things, and again to preface for a little bit, for those that may be new to the body of work that I'm here to support, is I'm Lisa Renee, and about 10 years ago, I went through a massive Kundalini awakening and had no idea that this would be my life, that this would be my complete focus at every waking moment. At that time, I was in what I call the third dimensional life, and in that structure, certainly feeling very disoriented and not connected to that structure at all, feeling that there was something that was very much missing. And through the dark night of the soul, which is the process of dismantling of identity, which many of us are undergoing right now, by the way, which we call the unidentity. There is no identity, and you're just spiritual nomading, hydroplaning around. That's the unidentity. So as we go through this, when you understand that this is a part of the spiritual consciousness movement through the planes, and there's a reason for it, there's a process, it makes it so much easier for your mind-body-spirit connection to now interlink. Because what's happening, because we're now moving into the surreal, is we're having a really hard time having the mind comprehend and use the mind as a tool to help navigate ourselves through these processes. So I've gone through and continue to go through the Ascension process, and during this time I was introduced to a group of beings that I later found out to be extraterrestrials. At the time I thought they were angels, and I was okay with angels. Extraterrestrials is another story. So lucky for me, they took me very slowly, because obviously they were kind enough to realize they didn't want me to fragment or go psychotic on them by actually taking in more information than I was ready to handle. So this happened about 10 years ago now, and it began a process of 10 years of downloading tremendous amounts of data and information around the ascension mechanics, the consciousness revolution, what's happening to the human being in this particular time and space, and the role humanity is for the universal ascension. Our evolution right now has such vast impacts, it's even beyond comprehension in language or words. What is happening now is absolutely the most amazing thing that humanity and the likes of apparently our universe have never seen before. We are reaching levels of consciousness integration that in this form have never happened before in the history of the humanoid or the human species. So it's a tremendous time right now, and clearly we're in a learn as you go period, which means they don't know, we don't know, who's steering the ship, it's us. Okay, so during this time, the last 10 years, a lot of information has come forth, and my role on this planet very clearly is to be an advocate for the starseed and indigo races. This family of consciousness has a very particular mission and has a very different experience than most of the masses, even in the light worker families. And again, this languaging, please understand when I say we are all one and part of the magnificent piece of God consciousness. There is no value difference. However, there is an understanding that there are expressions of God's source that have an architecture, and that architecture is a blueprint. And that blueprint is our divinity and purpose in action. Each of us have this. If we understand how to allow that expression without any mental limitations or programming that keep us suppressed, we become God in action. And that really is the indigo starseed blueprint, if you will, is allowing this vessel to be a vessel of God consciousness and going through the unlayering process and the clearing and the detoxification processes of actually being able to embody this frequency, which is beyond anything we can imagine. Our divinity is like being plugged into voltage we can't even comprehend. When we understand that our body is going from a carbon-based biology to a silicate-based, progressively less dense states of physical matter, you can only imagine we've got to do that gradually, otherwise we'd spontaneously combust. It'd be like plugging in 5,000 volts. Your body would not be able to handle it. So our goal is biological ascension, which means the drawing in of divinity, the drawing in a frequency that is literally intelligence, and that intelligence is our God source. But it comes to us generally in braids and weaves. We get like more and more access to intelligence, because if we again were to go 0 to 1,000 overnight, we would burn out our nervous system and our bodies, and that's not productive for us. So, and I know this all too well with Kundalini fun. So through this process, again, I am a galactic emissary. I'm here to support this group that is awakening first to be the Ascension Vanguard, and this group is generally galactically based indigos and beings that work with the biological encodements of ascension. Each of us have different roles in the ascension process, but generally those that are driven and interested in this level of information are being recruited for leadership, are a part of the planetary grid work, beings that are sent all over the demographic location of the Earth grid to exchange codes and different energies with places on the Earth. Those that do the biological ascension, that go through tremendous amounts of ascension symptomologies, sometimes very intense. Like recently, we've had cases of stigmata, people bleeding, the wounds of Christ. This is something that the body, to understand, the physical body is the Holy Grail. A lot of us in the spiritual movement didn't really understand that the body is where it's all happening. You know, in the New Age, actually, there's a lot of kind of movement where we don't pay attention to the physical body because we're actually more wrapped up into the spiritual realms. But ascension is about the biological ascension of bringing the resurrection of the life force to resurrect the anti-life force. This body has been born into an anti-life force, and that is the third dimensional energetic structures that have genetically altered this physical form. The starseed and the indigo, while we are bringing in the biological encodements, is here to resurrect and transcend that anti-life force that is encoded in this body. That is absolutely amazing when you think about it. And something too, when you're having a hard day and you're passed out on the couch from a Kundalini episode, you really need to give yourself a pat on the back and say, one for the Gippers. We're really, oh, it sounds familiar. So anyway, so this particular information is a little bit more niche. And please excuse my language again. Sometimes if you have any questions at the end of this, please ask me so I can clarify anything that doesn't seem to be clear. But this level of information is generally more supportive and directed for those that are aggressively being thrust through an ascension process and going through a massive shift into an energetic leadership space of holding energy for others. And in that particular level of transformation, there are levels of understanding of energetic integrity, energetic sustainability, understanding what impulses of energy are coming from where, and when people are interacting with you, that you understand there is an alchemy present. Everything that is brought into your field is no accident. Everything that is there is in the perfection for a reason, and many times there is an exchange that is happening, which again I want to talk about for a moment. The law of harmonics for the starseed is absolutely a mandatory law that you need to understand. And that is that through the music of the spheres, which I have presented just from a framework of a modeling of the dimensions of energy that we are working with at this time, is that let's start with understanding that in the third dimensional world, in this time-space hologram that we are gathered, the person known as Lisa and all of us that are here, this is a personality program. It is literally not subject to the spiritual forces. This body is a genetically engineered biocomputer of which the Lisa is literally a personality program. And that program is comprised of 3 dimensions in our energetic body, and that is the first, second, and third. One thing you'll understand is that the Trinity and Triads, the pyramid, are extremely important in the geometric basis of the mechanics of creation. You'll find Triads, Trinity, and 3 almost everywhere because they are the basis of all creation in terms of form, matter,